This is Including You, the new series from Lead at Any Level. Including You features stories from chief diversity officers and other executives who are creating inclusive cultures in their organizations. Our goal is to show what's working in companies just like yours, to give you the tools you need to keep pushing for progress in your own workplace. We want to create belonging and opportunity for everyone, including you. And now here's your host, Amy C.
Welcome back to Including You. I'm your host, Amy C. Wanninger, the Inclusion Catalyst. My guest today is Wendy Cocke. She's the founder of Engineering Leadership Solutions, a consulting firm that strengthens organizations through the development of people, processes, and best practices. She's also the author of 2 books, Making Flex Work and Reimagine Your Work. Engineering Leadership Solutions is based in Mariettta, Georgia. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Amy. It's so great to be here.
It is so good to see you again. I am excited to talk to you today about flex work. This is a hot topic right now in the workplace, in diversity and inclusion circles, in accessibility circles. And I know this book is not your most recent book, and we'll get to your most recent book at the end, but when you were writing Making Flex Work, why was this so important to you and your clients?
So it was important to me because I have been a flexible work employee for over half of my career. Before it was popular to be a flexible work employee, I was one. And I know the challenges of getting started when you just know that you need that for your life. So I wrote it for all of those people who were struggling to figure out how to find the balance that they needed to be successful in all the places. But it was important for business because coming out of the pandemic, we now have a workforce that knows what it's like to work from home. And business has to be able to adjust to that. We can't just imagine, when I published it in 2022, we couldn't just imagine that we were going back to the 2019 world, right? Like we weren't just going to flip a switch and forget that we could be productive at home. So how can we arm leaders with the tools they need to help people do the right work at the right place at the right time?
And I want to be clear, flex work is not just about working from home. It's not just about remote work. There are other components. Can you talk about, when you talk about flex work, what are some of the permutations or factors that fall under the category of flex work?
Yeah, so I'm a huge proponent of hybrid work. And by hybrid, I mean figuring out what is the best place and time to do the work that needs to be done and then doing it there. So when I talk to my clients, I talk to them about the fact that a regular 9 to 5 is not a flexible job, but neither is I only work remotely. That's not flexible work. Neither is I only come to the office on Wednesday. That's not flexible work. It's hybrid, but it's not flexible, right? There are options where I have clients who work in global teams and they work a split schedule. So I have a good friend who works between, say, 5 in the morning and 11, because all of her peers in her European country or her European company are all working at that period of time. She is the best lunch date around because she's done at 11 o'clock. All of her people have gone home for the afternoon. She does everything that she needs to do during the day. She even goes to all of her kids' activities in the evenings. And then she gets back online around 8 or 9 o'clock. And she works until midnight. And she does that because her team works in Asia. So she gets up in the morning and she works with her peers, and then she lives her life, and then she works in the evening with her team. That is a very flexible schedule, but it's not something people normally think of. We typically think of, well, my employees just don't want to come to the office. Well, no, where do they need to be to get the work done, right? When we're kicking off a project, maybe we do need everybody to come in, but when they're actually doing the heads down focus work of the project, they don't need to be together. One of the things I tell my client is if you're walking around and everybody has headphones on, they probably don't need to be in the office for that work, because all they're doing is trying to block out the office.
Exactly. And, this brings up a couple of points. So, from an inclusion standpoint and from an accessibility standpoint, remote work, flex work is key to attracting and retaining employees with disabilities. People who have major medical needs probably need to go to the doctor, probably can't do that on nights and weekends, right? So they need some flexibility in their schedules, but also in where they work. And this has been an accessibility issue, for a while, that folks in the disability community have said, look, if I can work from home, I can be more productive. I don't have all these barriers to getting my work done. We also saw coming out of the pandemic a big racial divide between who wanted to go back to the office, right? Most white people wanted to go back to the office because they found community there. Most Black and brown people did not want to go back to the office because they were tired from code switching and from the constant microaggressions that happened to them at work. And then new research has come out that women and minoritized individuals are more often interrupted in the office than their white male counterparts. And so all of the context switching that they have to do, even beyond the code switching, but the context switching they have to do eats up so much of their productive time. And so it can be a real barrier to productivity to be in the office for some people. With all of that, and I know, giving us remote options also opens up our talent pool, right?
It absolutely does.
So it's not just about finding, when I worked for a company that was based in Boston and I was based in Indy, and a lot of the roles that would open up that I was interested in were in Boston. But the people weren't, even the people who worked in Boston weren't in the office all the time. Like I can get to the office 3 days out of the month like everybody else, but I'm not based there. So why is location a barrier for me? Even with all of that, we're seeing so much resistance, so much pushback, so many lines being drawn in the sand saying you must be in the office this many days a week. Where is all of that resistance coming from, Wendy?
So I think it's coming from two places, and I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends when I say what I say. So the first has to do with investors and commercial real estate, right? As companies have long spent their money on commercial real estate, the investors are saying it's still on your books. Aren't people going to sit in it? So there is a piece of this that's like, what do we do with these buildings that we have? How do we invest to make them useful for people that are in the office? Because the way office work happens has evolved over the last 4 years. So I think there is a push to simply utilize things that we have, use the assets that we have. The second is probably even less popular, Amy, than my first first opinion. And that has to do with control. And I say that as a parent who likes to think that I don't need all this control. My children would tell you that I do, but I like to think that I don't. I like to think that I delegate in my professional life and in my personal life. And so let me just take a moment and step out of the professional, because sometimes it's hard for us to think about the professional because that's what we wrap ourselves in. We have a lot of pride in that. But when we can think about ourselves in our personal lives, sometimes we can get insights into how we're behaving in our professional life. So we recently remodeled our bathrooms in the upstairs of our house. And for the last 4 years, my children have been getting ready in the master bathroom because for various reasons, they have not been using the 2 bathrooms in the upstairs of our house. They are 10 and 13. I know they are capable of getting ready. I know they know how to brush their teeth. I know they brush their hair. I know that they put their deodorant on. But when that remodel finished and I moved all their stuff up to their bathrooms and I could no longer check to see what was happening as I was getting ready in the morning, I realized that I had all this anxiety. I felt the need to shout upstairs constantly. Are you brushing your teeth? Did you use your deodorant? Did you change your underwear? Right? Like I'm feeling like things that I need to check in on. Now let's put that into the world of professional work. We have leaders who are excellent at delegating. They know what they're doing. They know their team is empowered to do things. And yet when they cannot walk around and check on them, they start to feel anxious. They start to wonder, are they really doing the work I asked them to do? Are they really going to hit that really quick deadline? They said they would have it by Thursday. It's Thursday. When on Thursday are they going to give it to me? All that anxiety that I feel as my kids are getting ready, our leaders feel when they have work that's being done remotely because they simply can't put their eyes on it. And so we have to figure out a way not only to build our trust, but also to deal with this is a control issue for us as the leader. And so what can we put in place so that we can fix our anxiety without having to create this artificial construct of coming into the office to get work done?
Yeah, for a while, I think in the 90s, that there was this term that was sort of adopted as a best practice for leadership, and it was called management by walking around. And this was supposed to be the way we connect with our teams and the way we build camaraderie and the way we, encourage engagement is by being present. And frankly, by interrupting people who are doing the work we ask them to do so we can talk to them about their kids, right? And so, and some people really enjoy that, others do not. And so we've seen this paradigm shift in leadership, but we don't really have a model to follow. We don't, as leaders, have the tools because our managers didn't manage us remotely necessarily. So we haven't learned, we haven't seen examples of that. We were all sort of forced to do it for a couple of years. And then there was sort of the sigh of relief from some folks, right, at the end of that. What are you seeing as best practices, having become the authority on this topic, that help bridge that gap between what workers need on the one hand, which is autonomy, flexibility, perhaps remote work, different schedules, not having somebody breathe down my neck all day, just trust me to get the job done, right? What is the bridge between that and this management need or leadership need of, I need to be able to see and touch people in a very real way so that my anxiety is not at 11?
Oh, absolutely. So, first of all, it comes with just maturity, right? We have to treat each other as adults and hold each other to adult standards. As a leader, if you have a team that you are giving this autonomy to and you're not going to be able to see them, you have to be extremely clear with what you need and when you need it. You no longer get to change your mind because you just thought of something else, because likely you can't get to that person. You can't go to their desk, stop them in their tracks and reset. You're being asked, be very thoughtful up front with what you want. Now, as leaders, we've been asking our teams to do this forever. We've been asking them for SMART goals. Now, as a leader, we just turn that back on them. We say, this is what I need with a time period and measurable results. If we can give a SMART objective to someone, then they can give us the work back. The second is being really clear with how we show when we're available and how we want to be approached. So are we a culture that is going to leave Microsoft Teams chat open all the time and people are going to be chatting? Well, is that effective in our organization or not? I don't know. I don't know what your organization is. But in some organizations, that actually detracts from work, right? Are we an organization that is going to do everything collaboratively? And so we're going to be in 1,000 virtual meetings because we don't know how to make decisions on our own? Or are we really going to delegate those decisions and then hold people accountable for those decisions? And I think the last piece, and this is something just very tangible, is whatever you think your one-on-one cadence is with your team. If you're not with them, you should double it. If you would normally talk to somebody once a month, you probably need to check in with them every other week. If you would normally talk to them on Mondays, maybe you should check with them on Mondays and on Wednesdays. It doesn't have to be long, but it gives you and your team open door to have that conversation in a way that there is no open door to go through, right? You want your team to know, this is when I'm going to be asking you questions and this is when you can ask me questions, because then we can do the heads down focused work and not be distracted.
Yes, absolutely. When you were talking about the Teams chat being open or the Slack channel being up all the time, right? Or, whatever the tool is that you're using, right? Or whatever instant message tool you're using at work. I remember I had an employee one time who came to my desk and said, we need to talk. And I had so much respect for him because he was always so direct and kind in his feedback to me as his manager, right? And I said, okay, what do we need to talk about? He said, well, I have ADHD. And when you IM me with a question that you think is innocuous, that takes me off track for a good hour. I need you to bundle those questions in an email so that I can check my email at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, lunchtime, and respond to everything at once. Now, I would love to say that I heard his feedback and accepted it and did exactly what he asked me to do immediately. I did not, because I also believe I have ADHD. And when I think of something, I feel like I need to get it out right then so I don't forget it. And so he came back to me about 3 days later and he said, okay, we need to talk again because when you IM me, and I said, oh, okay, I got it now. Sorry. Right. And so I internalized that, but it's not just about the culture. It's also about what your individual teammates need to be successful. Right. And so what I'm hearing from you is more communication as a team, more one-on-one communication, more expectation setting, better expectation setting, and managing to results, not to busyness, not to butts and seats, not to appearances or politics, but really about the results of the work is what is going to get people through this transition into more autonomy and more flexibility. Is that true?
Absolutely, Amy. We all know that person that was the first person to get there in the morning and the last one to go home and seemed to never get anything done. We, for years, we have created a culture where presence is good. Businesses know that they need results. And if I can get the results in 3 hours, excellent. And if I can get the results in 20 minutes, even better. But if it takes me 8 hours, well, okay, then it takes me 8 hours. We need to be real honest. I tell leaders all the time that every one of your employees is like a plate, and their plate is a different size based on the work that you give them and how it fits with their natural talents. If you put me in a situation where I am in my zone of genius, my plate is really big, you can load it up. You can give me all sorts of tasks and I'm going to be able to deliver. But if you put me in something that I've never done before and that makes me very uncomfortable, my plate is very small. And so, yeah, my plate's full, even though I might only have 2 little bites on it. Right? I've got an appetizer size plate because I'm not ready yet. And as the leader, you need to know what size plate, because full is full, but everybody's got a different plate based on the work and based on their skills.
This is so true. And this is why I'm such an advocate for Gallup Clifton Strengths as a tool for teams and for leaders and for employees to understand where is their zone of genius, right? So we can get the right work to the right people. And I think, there are other ways to do that on teams as well. When teams do embrace flex work, what results do they see? What changes can they expect? What benefits do they
if your team
realize?
is global and you really embrace flex work, there's a potential that you can have productivity happening 24 hours a day. If your team really is good and masters this idea of how do we share tasks and share documents, how do we transition knowledge, you can start to run like an ICU, right? That patient gets care all the time. Every nurse knows what the other nurse did. They know what's on the paperwork for the day. They don't have to have seen the doctor in the rounds to know how to take care of that patient. When your team really embraces this idea of flexible work and doing the right work at the right place at the right time, you can have 24-hour care for your project. You can say, you know what? These 3 emergencies came up. I didn't get to the one thing that we all agreed, but there's a way for me to communicate that so that the person that's picking it up knows that they can pick it up. Or they know that if there are 5 things that have to get done, the one most important is this, and everybody knows those are those decisions. You can start to self-regulate and self-triage problems as a team if you really embrace doing this flexibly, because people are not afraid to give you more time. When people are engaged and people feel like what they are doing makes a difference, they are not watching the clock. So if you as a leader can get them to be passionate about the work they are doing, they will go above and beyond for you to make sure that the project is successful.
So I'm hearing better results, faster results, discretionary effort, cross training,
all of it.
Met deadlines. Like it's amazing to me that there's so much resistance to this still, because we as leaders have so much of our ego in the way of getting
hard.
the work done. It is tough. So Wendy, I want to switch gears just a little bit. I want to ask you about your newer book, Reimagine Your Work. Can you tell us just a little bit about what that book is and who it's for?
Yeah, so Reimagine Your Work is a perspective of looking at your career as if you are your own small business. So I grew up in a small business and I had no idea that I was learning all of these skills practically through osmosis. And so as an engineer, I've always approached my career differently. I always wanted to know, like, how does my project fit into the big picture? Or how does this product fit in the overall portfolio? What compromises are being made so that we can move things forward? I ran my career like I was the product, and it didn't matter who I worked for or where I worked. I was looking for what new features and benefits was I doing for myself, right? The most important product for your team to develop is themselves, because when they are the best product, then they bring you the best product. So it's really this career journey of how do you think about your board of directors? How do you help your team realize what is their quality control? What is the brand that your team has or you have today? And as a leader, the team that you've put together now becomes part of your brand. So how do you put together a team that goes out and does what you would want them to do without you having to be there, because they're just brand representatives of you?
So it sounds like it's a book for employees, but also for leaders.
Absolutely.
who are committed to lifelong learning and development.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Wendy, I've got your LinkedIn link in the show notes. I'll put links to your books there as well, and also to your website for engineering leadership solutions. All of that will be available in the show notes at includingyoupodcast.com. And we look forward to talking to you again and finding out what you have coming up next. And I hope folks will reach out, especially if they are trying to make flex work in their organizations.
Thanks so much, Amy.
If you've enjoyed this episode, follow Lead at Any Level on LinkedIn and YouTube. Then join us for Including You video simulcast every Thursday at noon Eastern. Including You can also be enjoyed each week as part of the Living Corporate audio podcast series, available on all major podcast platforms. Learn more at living-corporate.com. Including You is brought to you in part by Lead at Any Level, a boutique training and consulting firm improving employee engagement and retention for companies that promote from within. Lead at Any Level. Leaders can be anywhere and should be everywhere. Learn more at leadatanylevel.com. Lead at Any Level and its logo are registered trademarks of Lead at Any Level LLC. The views and opinions of guests on our show do not necessarily reflect the positions of Lead at Any Level, Living Corporate, or the sponsors of Including You.
That's it for this week's edition of Including You. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you found us. Don't forget to leave us a comment or a review to help others find us as well. Be sure to join me next week when my guest will be Nakia Brown